This is the Weigh In Podcast by Ben Wad Chestnut and the occasional Pop in Sebastian Romero. On this week, we have the highly asked for, as always, through our questions, the breakdown of the Anthony Knox to Rutgers, which is fairly interesting, and we'll get into all of that, and the Jax Forrest debut in Okie for the Cowboys. So that, nonetheless, is what we have for you on this week's Takedown Thursdays. Nonetheless, so that is this week's weigh-in. That is this week's Takedown Thursday, presented by the weigh-in. So we jump right into the second one, really first. Jax Forrest makes his debut. Congrats to Jax Forrest getting in there, getting out there, and doing exactly what most would believe he was going to do, and I did as well. Great thing to see Jax Forrest get out there and do what he's got to do. And I think it's only when you talk about Jax Forrest, I think it's only up from here, and I think we're going to see a trend that is new, because you have to understand this kid went from high school wrestling to college, so it's kind of that hockey trend where you see the guys in college hockey get drafted, play to Frozen Four, and then after, if they're out, they're straight to professional. So you kind of see that in a sense where it's kind of like it's fairly interesting. I would like to say that how that goes on and how that was the situation made in terms of Jax. It was, hey, I want to straight to college. It's like, all right, high school's done, straight to college. So I think this is interesting, and I think, will we see it more often? It's possible. If the athletes feel they're good enough, it's possible. It's possible. It's very possible in terms of it. And I think it was the right move. And I think that's the so that's the key, the key factors here is that it's a good situation in terms of what goes on and what doesn't. This is a situation where you're seeing a kid go from high school straight to college, and the situation where you're seeing him do it early, a whole semester early. Like, this is this is I wouldn't say it's new to the community, but I would say it's something that's highly, it's not always done like this. And I say that because it really isn't. It really isn't. You don't see this too often. And I say that because it truly is something different. It's something different that we're really seeing here. That it's really something that you look at it and you say, "Wow." Will it have rendered itself successful? I think so. I really think so. That it will render itself successful. I think it's fairly interesting, and I think in terms of it, it's going to be nice. Now, I think all great things from him. We'll watch that as it develops. All great things. So here's the best thing here. on this Anthony Knox situation, Anthony Knox to Rutgers. I think now I don't say that a reporter can't write what they want to write. First and foremost, I will give you where it went, if it's even still up. It was on NJ.com where a reporter turned around and said, "Disgraced NJ wrestler." First off, we gotta chomp the bit here. First of all, calling somebody disgraced would imply that somebody has done something to tarnish the reputation as an NJ wrestler. And, you know, the Knox situation is not of a normal situation. And for a reporter to sit there and say, "Oh, disgraced NJ wrestler," you still have a problem with Anthony Knox. And this is just, at this point, it's getting ridiculous. You know, it is very well ridiculous that you're still going back and forth at Knox because you don't like it. First of all, listen, if you don't like it, go join a club. Go join a club. Go get your wrestler better. We talked about this before on the on an epi on the last epi, I believe, or so. Go get your own club and join it. Go like I can't say enough that they're going back and forth bashing Anthony Knox because they don't like the situation because you don't like somebody because he was good and you couldn't beat him. You know, there is a difference. Everybody's gonna come to a time where they don't like the villain figure. And I'm not saying Anthony Knox is a villain, but I'm saying, when you come into wrestling and anytime you're a 4-time national champ, a lot of times if you win weight class over and over again, they a lot of times they will see you as a villain. They say that kid keeps winning. That kid, nobody else can win nothing, blah, blah, blah. Anthony Knox is not that guy. It's plain and simple. He's somebody who was good, talented, and when you look at him, yes, he got 4 state titles. But you look at like his high school career, and this is the truth. So I'm gonna get it for you because this is the ridiculous thing that's going on. So he finished his high school career with 144 wins with 1 loss. 1 loss. Anthony Knox was, and I say this lightly, Anthony Knox was not undefeated. It was something. It was of a something saying that he can be beat. The reason why you aren't, you're so focused on laughing at him than you are about your own wrestling. Like you talk about Anthony Knox was disgraced. This is how it went. It's when the situation went down, how we broke it. How we broke it down on the weigh-in. Nobody was talking about. I still call it the SpongeBob campfire. The SpongeBob campfire. Nobody wanted to talk about how all the other kids were doing stuff, and now you're still saying Knox is disgraced, but you don't find it ridiculous on what everybody else was doing. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, this is, what what is your problem with Anthony Knox? There really shouldn't be a problem with Anthony Knox at this point. You look at everybody else has just said, hey, it is what it is. The fact that somebody else is mad that they set themselves up for success is none other than their own faults. You're mad because this kid won 4 state titles. I didn't see you do this when Nick Siriano came up. I don't see you do it when Anthony Ashnault came up. And these were guys that didn't get beat. I understand he only has 1 loss, but didn't get beat. Like, it's just really saddening to see that it's come to a time where, where the achievement of being a 4-timer is now you're met with all this hate, and it's just not right. Somebody wins 4 state titles, that's monumental. They go to college, at a school like Cornell. That's monumental. You know, for us, I say us NJers from NJ. I'm sure you probably it probably has happened a lot more than I would know, but it's not that often that you see, the NJ kids often schools like Cornell. I mean, now it's common. It's been common in the last, I want to say, the last decade or so. It's been a little more common. But when you look at like NJ wrestling as a whole, and you look at our numbers at NCAA's when we get All Americans, and you look at all of that, and you put that all together, and you say, okay, NJ's a percent, but it's you know we want to be top totem, and we're getting there. I think and still believe NJ wrestling is top totem. NJ wrestlers will give you an upset better than any wrestler. For instance, Dean Peterson. We talk about All-American CJ Compusto came out an All-American, another NJ boy. You talk about Jordan Burroughs was an NJ boy. You talk about New Jersey has had some of the best built wrestlers. Like, okay, you talk about why you got Sebastian Rivera was an NJ, another NJ up there. Anthony Ashton, Nicholas Soriano, national champs. We're talking here. National champs. And for Nicholas Soriano, a multiple time national champ. Patrick Glory, NJ wrestler. When I tell you there's a lot of good NJ wrestlers out there, that NJ wrestling is pinnacle. And the fact to say that you're telling a pinnacle NJ wrestler, history made NJ wrestler, that he's disgraced because your opinion is you feel that, and you know what? I'm not going to say, I can't speak to what is or isn't. You know what I'm saying? But we're going to speculate. And I'm telling you right here, speculation. I think he's upset about the fact that Anthony Knox was granted another way to get a 4th state title through a judge. Listen, you're getting mad at Anthony Knox. You're getting up there and doing what just about anybody would do. Defend your family. And now, the details of all of that, that's just, my old Google it. But defend your family. And in terms of that, it's just like, all right, the fact that you're saying he's disgraced, I say this lightly because we're in a world where defamation takes over everything. And you got to be careful what you're putting out as a media publication. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what NJ.com has done, because there isn't. But I'm saying as a reporter, just the report itself, you got to, I don't say you got to stay your lane situation. You're allowed to go and say this is that, this is a disgraceful situation. You're allowed to say situation, but to call somebody themselves disgraced, a disgraced NJ wrestler, I didn't like it at all. I did not like the article. I didn't think it was even, I didn't find it amusing. I think it's just absolutely, I think it is like this. It's taking bullying to a whole nother level. And I call it bullying because you're calling somebody a disgraced NJ wrestler, and then you're posting it online and you're saying, hey, this is a disgraced NJ wrestler. But in fact, it is not. This is a historic 4-time national champion. 4-time state champion here. That would not make him a disgraced wrestler. He made history. How many wrestlers in New Jersey have 4 state titles? 4 state titles. Not too many. And to sit there and say, he's a disgraced NJ, he's a historic NJ wrestler. He's a historic NJ wrestler, not a disgraced one. Yours are mad because he was granted another chance. First of all, he had to go through a region and the state tournament, which that's more than enough chances where somebody could have beat him. Remember, we said the record was 144 wins and 1 loss. Somebody could have made it a 2 losses. They didn't. Why? Because he's good. Because he's a good wrestler. Now you come out and you say, well, he's a disgrace. I think in terms of it, you gotta look at now before, okay, get kids in high school, whatever. Still can't defamate, but kids in high school, kids this and that, but kids no longer in high school. Kids an adult now, and at this point, with good money, we all. If you didn't read those reports on why some schools backed out. That NIL was high. As I like to say, the stock of Anthony Knox was high. The stock of Knox was very high. And I say that because it was, I don't remember who reported it, but it was a report. I think it was through Flow Wrestling. They said Ohio State was out because the NIL was too high. The NIL was high. You look at that and you say, wow, you know, it just, you just say, okay, you're going to sit here and say, okay, this is a disgraced wrestler, but you're sitting here and you're bashing another wrestler. And you're going on to bring up old news at this point and say, oh, what happened? This is, you're salty. We entrust that reporters will do the right thing. Now, you're allowed to provide your opinion. We all know that with news publication. But you have to put fact. He could have said, if you're doing it in report, instead of saying disgraced NJ wrestler, you could say most controversial NJ wrestler. To go and use a word like disgraced is putting out a disgraced NJ wrestler is you're saying a fact. You're saying, oh, this is a disgraced NJ wrestler, which it isn't. Given the situation, you say he's disgraced, but I'm curious on all the other situations where there were wrestlers involved in fisticuffs. Were they disgraced? No, he probably wasn't even probably was a reporter, but at the same time, you say, people, different jobs, different areas, but were they disgraced? Now you're calling Anthony Knox disgraced because like I like saying, my speculation, you're all fabbed up something so you could get him out of the tournament, and they fought it. He was able to stay in the tournament as they tried to get him out of the tournament. Then all of a sudden he stayed in the tournament, and then he won his fourth state title. And now you're sitting here saying, well, he's disgraced. He's not historic. He's disgraced. He's historic all day, every day. He's historic. And it's ridiculous that reporters can go and can go out and just blatantly go ahead and say, hey, he's a disgraced NJ wrestler. He's an historic one. He'd be disgraced if he wasn't allowed in the tournament. But now you're saying, oh, no, he's a disgraced one. No, he's historic. There's a clear difference. And it's the way the way in what you write, the articles that you post is going to be a huge difference. And I say that because first and foremost, he could have said controversial. You could have used better language in terms of turning around and saying a disgraced NJ wrestler. You could have said, oh, controversial NJ wrestler commits to Rutgers. And the most controversial NJ wrestler has now just committed to Rutgers. But to say disgraced NJ wrestler, he's not disgraced. He's historic. He's got 4 state titles. How many wrestlers have 4 state titles? He's historic. For them to sit there and say, that he's historic. That's just the way I see it. Another thing that was come out in this kind of week, Mosama Endine is out of Iowa. He's out at Iowa. Many of you don't know he's out at Iowa. The speculatory story there, I say speculatory because I would always tell you Google it. They say it was issues with NIL. So sucks it didn't work out for you, but this is what I'm talking about. This is the college world we live in now. I mean, well, some of us aren't still in college, but the college world we watch now. NIL has taken over, and that is a clear situation where this college world, people are not going to schools for what you would think anymore. They're going because they say, hey, well, what are you giving me NIL? That's why I told you it's pro sports. It really is. Because hey, how much NIL you going to give me? Well, I think I can make this. I'm worth this. The bidding war, there has been NIL bidding wars over every wrestler. You go in the transfer portal, which I call the draft. I always call it the draft. I still have. I call it the draft, and you go and you say, okay, I'm gonna get a pick. Iowa says they're gonna let me go ahead. We're gonna get, for instance, Dean Peterson. Let's go ahead and select Dean Peterson. Well, I call it like a pro day. I really the transfer portal is just like a pro day. Teams will reach out to you. You'll go ahead. I consider it the free. I consider it a free agency. That's what it really is. You'll meet with all these different schools. Will contact you, and then you'll turn around and they'll all give you a figured number. Well, it used to be they'll contact you, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you found a school. Nowadays, they'll contact you. They'll give you a figure for NIL. They don't give you an NIL figure. You're like, well, I'm going to go somewhere where if you're giving me, for instance, 300,000 NIL, well, I'm going to go to the school that gives me 2 million NIL. It just is like we got to pump them brakes. It has turned into like absolutely you're drafting them because think about it. Really, you're recruiting them from high school, so you're going ahead, you're looking at them, you're drafting them. They signing sign an intent saying, "Hey, I'm gonna." That's it. Time I finish high school. That's what I'm telling you. It's just like this hockey situation. This hockey situation. Guys get drafted, guys. So let's break down the. So let's see. I looked this up so I can get it for you to best explain it as part of this situation. Well, according to Google here, it says an NHL team owns the rights to a player, and that's kind of and then they sign their pro contract right after the whatever if they're out of nationals. So that's what happens. What Google calls it a burn a year. So that's just kind of what it kind of. So they basically they say it's an entry level contract sign. But my point is like this is like you're going in high school. You're like okay, uh, you know such and such whatever the case may be. John Doe commits to Okie State. Well, Okie State just went out and said, hey, we're selecting you, we're drafting you. Go ahead and I know they don't really do intent as much as they used to, but you look at you sign that little intent and say, "Hey, I'm going there." Then you could go around and you kind of almost say, "Oh, I'm gonna decommit. I don't want to go there. I'm gonna I'm gonna go over to John Doe's gonna go to Penn State and be for Kel Sanderson." Now you look at so clearly what I'm getting at here is like NIL changed college sports, and I don't say that for and it changed it for the worse. I don't say it changed it for the better. I get, that you may be liking it, that name likeness and image, and that they get to make money for themselves. And I get that. And it's not easy as being a college athlete. And I get that for all the other sports. But for wrestling, it changed it. You have a guy go to a school and the first NIL is absolutely comes up. How much can I make NIL? It, and I say that because that's what it is. Like I called the transfer portal the draft. You're going in, you're like, hey, I want you on my team. I'm gonna try to draft you. Then you come in and it's like, but really what it is a free agency list. Like you're looking at all the free agents, that are out there, no school. Really, they're out of school, no school. Go ahead, you have a meeting with them. You talk contract negotiation, NIL, really NIL, and then you go, hey, this is what you're gonna make NIL. He may meet with 4 or 5 other schools. They get an NIL figure, find the best one, and say, that's where I'm going. And a lot of people may say, well, that's not true, but listen, that's a lot how it looked with this Anthony Knox situation up in the wind. And that's not the only one either. That is not the only situation where you've seen a lot of this. Look at all the people that have transferred into Iowa, have transferred into you got a good looking squad at that Iowa State. I don't but I'm more or less transferred into Iowa. You look at the transfer portal. I'm not saying let's take Anthony Knox out of it. Although that's a textbook situation where it was a free agent and everybody was shopping around NIL. But take that out of the situation. There are plenty of other situations where you see, okay, NIL is part of the conversation now, and you're going to see a guy go to a school because this school's going to say, hey, can we make this NIL? Can we give this NIL? Listen, Joe Burrow is a textbook case. Joe Burrow's a textbook case. A lot of people, he started off at Ohio State. I'm going to fact check myself on that one because I know Joe Burrow's a textbook case where I believe it was Joe Burrow, or it might have been, it was one of them, started at Ohio State and then left because he was making better NIL. For the NIL. Let me see. If I can find this out. They say they say well, what I've been able to find out, I don't think this was the case. It was one of them, but it says Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord. But let me see if I could find it, who I was thinking of. But it's absolutely crazy that this is how it is. Uh, Pretty case here. It was Quinn Ewers. He didn't leave specifically for that, but it was it says here being in Texas allowed him to better capitalize on his lucrative name, image, and likeliness deals, which were a major factor in, the, in evolving the landscape of college sports at the time. So I believe it was Quinn Ewers. Where he left for the NIL. And that's what, I'm not saying, I'm not in no way, shape, or form saying that's why, in no way speaking that that's why Anthony Knox left Cornell. I had to put that out there so nobody gets out and makes that assumption. But I'm telling you, NIL changed everything, and I'm like, you got people that Nowadays, you say, hey, I'm gonna go to this school. That you know what? Look at Anthony Ferrari. Look at or AJ Ferrari. Um, no, I don't think that was an NIL situation. Either way, it's like nobody's going to a school and saying, okay, is this squad going to get a national title? Can I be a national champ here? What I'm pretty sure they're still doing that. But then again, they're looking like, if I'm not, what's that NIL? And I could be wrong. This is all speculatory. It's my opinion. So I will say that in no way, shape, or form is most of what I say fact, unless I say it's fact. Like, there are some things I say fact, but there are some things that I do speculate on. But I will say this, that I will say this, though. NIL changed college sports. I get they're making money, but not really for the better. Not really for the better. I get it in terms of like Division 3, where you kind of like you don't really kind of like D2, D3. Like I get it where you don't really have like set scholarships. It helps in that case. You say, okay, you're not scholarshiping me, but you tell me I'm gonna make this NIL, so I'm gonna have some money. I don't know. It's all new, and it's all like, although NIL is not really that new much anymore. It's been out there, but it's still changed college sports for a difference. But either way, that is all I got for you today. That is Thursday's Takeout Thursdays. Happy. So I won't forget this time. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Y'all already know. So with that being said, this is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. Weigh-In out.
The way in where stories ignite.